Hello everyone and welcome back for some more freshly brewed drag tea. Today I have with me a fabulous Drag Race superfan who won our hearts with her charm and poise when she appeared on the Makeover Challenge on season 12 of RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm super excited for you all to get to know her better and learn more about her life, her time on the show, and what she's been up to since season 12. We'll of course be talking all things Drag Race, and I'll be asking some of the amazing questions you all sent in. Please join me in welcoming the incredible Tara Misu, aka Janet the Planet.
Yay!
Hi.
Hi, great to see you.
Thank you so much for being here. It's lovely to see you too. I mean, everyone was so excited to hear from you and everything. I love the look, by the way. You're giving me kind of like
thank you.
DJ.
Go rock my vibes this morning. Over my
Thank
first
you so
coffee.
much for being here. I know obviously everyone's very excited to hear from you and hear about your time on the show. And I loved you on the show, and you were so fun. So yeah, we obviously people had lots of questions for you and everything. We'll just be discussing a bit about you, your life, your name, your time on the show, and your sort of experience and everything. Before we start, I know obviously a lot of people will, let's address the drag elephant in the room, shall we say. Obviously, during the Makeover Challenge, you were partnered with Sherry Pie. And to make it clear to anyone watching, we are not going to be discussing Sherry Pie or the situation anyway. That's nothing to do with Janet. So the only time we will be potentially discussing Sherry is as an artist on that episode and your sort of interaction and the artistry that you both created. But other than that, we will not be discussing it, just to make that clear. Okay, great. So, I wonder if you could sort of tell us a little bit about, your background. Obviously, you mentioned on the show that you legally changed your name to Janet the Planet.
And you were legally Janet the Planet.
I am legally Janet the Planet. I changed my name more than 20 years ago. It was really to remind myself to not take myself too seriously.
Which is great. So I was wondering if you could sort of tell us a bit about that.
Sure. An innovator by trade, and but in a past life, I've kind of lived about 10 lives already. I'm 46 now, so I've had a lot of different chapters in my life so far. I did have a chapter in my early 20s where I kind of ditched my engineering background and became a fashion designer, and went to London, studied fashion in London, and came back to Canada, started my own fashion label. And I showed at Fashion Week a few times. And I had always been known as Janet the Planet from the time I was about 18. And then as I became a fashion designer, I was like, I want to become this person, and I want to live Janet the Planet. And I had always, I'd always wanted to unleash whatever was inside, a little bit like how Rue talks about how drag brings out someone's real self. I just really, as I said on the show, I really wanted to remind myself to not take myself too seriously, because at the end of the day, at that point, it was only fashion. So I wanted to make sure I kept myself in check. And then I made the name change, and it had this kind of knock-on effect in my life, as I've kind of lived through all these different chapters of my life, where not only does it remind me to not take my own self too seriously, but it reminds other people to not take themselves too seriously too, because after all, they're sitting across a board table from Janet the Planet. So it had all these lovely other effects that I never dreamed it would, makes the silly, goofy things in life, like going to the post office or clearing customs, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great name, and it's really cool. I think you sort of embraced this part of you, because obviously on the show you talked about the fact that you're 6 foot and everything, and you said that you for a while people would maybe mistake you for a man or something, so you kind of took that part of it, and you sort of took something that you were slightly insecure about and actually then turned it into a positive and changed your name legally to sort of own that, and I thought that was so cool,
Mm-hmm.
and like that was so fun of you, and I think a lot of people were inspired by that, because I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll never forget. I was like really wildly colorfully dressed, wearing all these kind of PVC clothes that I made for myself, with like my kind of signature hairdo and giant platform boots. And I was walking through a mall in Toronto, and some little kid like pointed at me and said, "Mommy, that's a man." And I was horrified. But it, and I think I resisted drag because I was like, wait, I'm allowed to be this exuberant and not, and I kind of like had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, being like, oh, am I not enough of a woman to be this much of a woman? But I quickly shed that kind of like anxiety about it. Once I kind of discovered drag and the beautiful drag community in Toronto. Yeah.
Well, that's really nice, and I think that's really cool that you found that like drag is almost like a way to find your. You said that you on the show, you said that was like you found your family, you found your people when you discovered drag.
Mm-hmm.
You said
Yeah.
you started going to drag shows at like 18, 19 years old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you could sort of tell us a little bit about that, like what sort of drag shows were the things that you liked, and like how did that then translate into watching Drag Race?
Mm-hmm. So there was a really cool scene happening in kind of mid 90s in Toronto, of like kind of performance art meets drag meets fashion meets installations. And I was really lucky to kind of find myself in that realm where I was kind of doing these avant-garde kind of kind of like the maker challenge a little bit, like where you're kind of making clothes out of everything you can find. So I would do these crazy shows, and then kind of there would be a lot of drag performances, and some of them pretty out there, like even more out there than what we see on Drag Race. So some things that were pretty gruesome or like wildly sexual, or like it was really rock and roll kind of drag that was around at that point.
That's interesting to hear that there's sort of, you had quite a broad exposure to all the different types of drag that there are. One of the things I think is quite interesting, obviously you mentioned being in Toronto and everything, and so I guess a lot of people maybe don't know that you are Canadian and you lived in Canada, or if you live, you don't know in Canada, because obviously the show is American and it was filmed in LA. So I was just wondering if you could talk a bit about that side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born in Canada. I grew up on Lake Huron, so like in one of the snowiest places on the earth. And then, as I said, I went to after I studied engineering, I moved to England for several years. Then I moved back to Toronto for a number of years. Then to LA. Then I moved to Switzerland. Then back to LA. So I've been around the world a bit. But LA feels like home now, and I've definitely had my quota of snow in my life. So
that's what I was going to say. You kind of, going from lots of like Canada, England, Switzerland, they're all quite cold countries, like not great, and then you go to LA, which is arguably one of the warmer places in America.
Yeah. After the first time I lived here, I was like, oh, this place, it's dirty, it's dysfunctional, it's broken. And then I moved to Switzerland, which is arguably one of the tidiest, cleanest, most pristine, spectacular looking countries. But I was just feeling starved of my creative inspiration. I was like, I got to get back to LA where it's dirty and inspiring. Yeah.
I guess every place has got its own like ups and downs, advantages, disadvantages. But obviously, we're glad that you were in LA, because obviously that meant that you got to appear on season 12 on the makeover challenge of Drag Race. I was just wondering, a lot of people wanted to sort of know, how did you get involved in the Drag Race makeover challenge, like the audition process? How did you find out about it?
Yeah, it was just luck and impulse. I happened to be on the Drag Race Instagram, saw their call for people to, if you're going to be around these days, would you be into an audience participation challenge, is how they recruited us. And so I submitted a video. Apparently there were thousands and thousands of submissions. I don't know how they got through them all. But then I got a call, and they said they wanted to have a Zoom with me and just kind of feel my energy. I was like, okay, for an audience thing, sure. And then I got the call to show up, and we did. But it was so funny because that scene where they have us in the waiting area saying that we don't know, we really didn't know. So much so that I was like, we arrived and we had to put name tags on. And I guess it was like all the crew and a bunch of other people from around the set were there to pretend to be other audience people. And I was like trying to be all helpful and getting them name tags. And they must have thought I was a lunatic.
Oh, that's really like sweet in that way. Because I mean, I've interviewed quite a few of the other guest stars from that episode, and a lot of them, some of them said that they said that you really didn't know that you were going to be makeover until you walked in the room, but some people said that they suspected because of the sort of the audition process and the questions they were asking. So is that how you sort of thought about it? Were you suspicious in any way?
It crossed my mind, but then once they that whole thing in the waiting area just like dashed any of those thoughts again, because I was like, okay, all these people are here. Clearly, it's what they said it was. But I had a flash of it in my mind, especially when we like did the like Zoom interview. But they really did a good job of pulling one over on us right before. So
yeah,
funny.
but I think that's really good that they did that, because I think it kind of like the genuine reaction that you all had and everything was really cool because of that exact reason. They did a really good job of hiding it. What were your immediate thoughts then when you walked into the workroom? I assume once you saw all the queens standing there, you must have realized that it was because there were 6 queens and 6 people. Were you? I guess you probably at that point were like, okay, yeah, it's definitely going to be a makeover, not just an audience thing.
Yeah, definitely. When we're in the workroom 6 on 6, I was like, okay, this is getting real. But it was a very strange sensation after being such a longtime fan of the show. You're used to when it's down to 6 queens that you've spent a whole season with them up to that point, right? And so it was odd to like come into the workroom with queens that we didn't know, just especially a smaller number of them, right? So it was strange. And then even thinking to when we were kind of watching the season back during the pandemic, just even being able to see where our episode fell sequentially and kind of all the dramas that had happened, or even just knowing that Jada had her look over there moment days before. It was funny to think about it in retrospect and kind of like knowing where we landed in their journey.
Yeah, no, I felt the same way when I watched it. I thought, well, we as an audience, we're watching this and we've spent the season so far with these queens and we know them all, but you 6 probably didn't really know any of the queens, unless they said someone else said that Shay knew Gigi already and she had already wanted to be her, and
wow.
Someone else, I can't remember who, someone knew Britta, not like personally, but they knew of Britta, who had been eliminated like the episode or 2 episodes before, and they really wanted to be with Britta. I think it might have been Heidi's partner, Nicole. I think she she told me that she asked Heidi whether Britta had been there, and Heidi had to lie and be like, no, I've never heard of Britta, knowing that obviously so that was really funny. So was that the case for you? Did you not know any of the queens at all?
Not the ones that were left. Others from the season I had seen in New York, because I used to split my time between LA and New York for a while, and so I really got into going to some of the New York drag shows. That and they were all new to me. Yeah.
And so when you found out you were going to have a full drag makeover, as a super fan of the show, what was sort of your immediate thoughts about that?
I had a bit of a like drag you flashback remember when they used to do the like the dinosaur hands on the keyboard dragulator thing. And sometimes the dragulator would spin out wonderful things, and sometimes the dragulator would spin out things that you're like, oh gosh, is it going to be that? And so I was praying that the drag makeover gods were on my side, and that I wasn't going to get a weird makeover. It's funny because we did this super campy look, which I loved and was able to. I'm grateful that it was so campy because it brought out that side of me, because I'm like I'm definitely an introvert, and despite all my color and my exuberance, I can be quite shy. And so having this kind of like campy character that I could inhabit was super helpful. I think if I'd had a super glam look, I don't know if I would have been able to relax quite so much. Yeah.
Yeah, that that was kind of gonna be one of my questions. Was I think your outfit, like, you looked so good, and it was, like you said, it was really campy and everything, and I think that was really cool to see, because you were, like you said, you did come across as being quite sort of quietly confident and quite sort of like poised. I think you were sort of you were probably the most quiet but also poised. Like, you seemed very sort of like zen and everything, which I really appreciate. And obviously you have this like amazing name. So I think that was quite a cool juxtaposition of your sort of slightly introverted personality with this like super campy, big makeup character. Yeah. One thing I was going to ask was, during the walkthrough, obviously you met RuPaul when you first walked in, and I assume as a super fan that must have been amazing. And then there was a moment where you explained your name, and RuPaul said, I officially love you.
I am legally Janet Planet. I changed my name more than 20 years ago. It was really to remind myself to not take myself too seriously.
Okay, I'm officially in love with you.
Oh my gosh.
I bet died. What was that moment like?
It felt like a dream. It was so amazing. So I'm going to tell you a little story that is going to make me seem like maybe I've been in California too long now. But I have a dream board on my wall, which is so California. Sorry, bear with me. But on my dream board was this picture of Ru I think it was one of the All-Stars like promo looks, where Ru has this beautiful white pompadour and that amazing white gown with the kind of points and things on it. So that's on my dream board. And as I'm having this walkthrough with Ru, and Ru's standing right in front of me and telling me he loves me, and he's framed entirely by that exact portrait on the workroom wall, because the workroom has all those portraits of Ru everywhere. But that specific portrait was framing Ru like exactly from my vantage point.
Oh my God. Yeah, so it's like it was written in the stars or something like that.
I was like, what is happening? This is amazing.
Yeah, so what did it feel like then, like not just having that kind of interaction, but actually meeting RuPaul and like being on camera and realizing that you are behind the scenes on a show that you're a super fan of? What did that kind of feel like? Were you able to process it in the moment, or?
It felt a little bit like an out-of-body experience, where I had to almost play it back to myself later to be like, okay, wow, that really happened. That was your life for a couple of days. It was amazing. But Ru actually hung out for quite a while in the walkthroughs. It's not sort of like zip zap. Like Ru stays and has a conversation and wants to get to know each person quite well. And we talked about Canada, because I kind of grew up watching RuPaul in all the MAC Cosmetics advertisements in the 90s in Canada, long before Drag Race. And Ru was just saying how much he enjoyed working with Canadians and being in Toronto, and also spilled the tea when that Drag Race Canada was coming on that walkthrough.
Oh, okay. That's so you got, because they didn't show any of that. Maybe that was deliberate, but so you got a little bit of tea for everyone else.
I did.
Well, that's really cool that you got to know all this like cool secret and everything before everyone else did.
Yeah.
And so then obviously, you know, we talked about it earlier, you know, we're not going to be talking about Sherry Pie, but obviously you were partnered with Sherry. And obviously I guess you didn't obviously know any about Sherry or anything, but you only know what you immediately see from someone. And Sherry obviously, regardless of like the other stuff, was a very like is a very campy like character, whatever. Is that something, was that the type of character that you had wanted like always, or was it kind of, were you not quite sure the campiness, how that was going to fit with your personality, or were you immediately like, oh no, this is the kind of thing I want?
I was a little bit intimidated by it. I was like, okay, I've got to deliver, because I know how much is on the line for the queens. And so I felt like a real pressure, but it's so cute. I actually had my notes that I like took notes as Sherry was telling me all the things that I should be doing. So it was like witty, funny, full character, go big, we're after hours, she's living her fantasy. Like these are all my notes about like what I needed to bring to this character. So I'm like, being a student of drag, trying to like make sure I can deliver all these things.
That's really sweet. And so it is literally like Drag U, like the university or whatever. Yeah, the U, like that's so funny. So then when you saw the outfits, because obviously you were kind of like waitresses from the 50s, obviously that was kind of part of the aesthetic, that it was always like a slightly older character, or at least from an older time. Is that something that was that kind of like 50s vibe? Was that something that you sort of quite liked and you could appreciate, or were you contemporary?
Absolutely. And it was so funny. I had those two big tutus on in the workroom, the red one and the yellow one. I have those exact tutus in my tutu closet at home. I have a tutu collection like this. And so I was like, I know how to rock these. So that was fun. I was a little nervous just because I'm so tall and I'm broad. I wasn't sure how costumes would work, but there was a lot of thought that had gone into these costumes, and they were designed to have that flexibility, and they had stretch in them so that it was able to stretch tall with my long body. And I didn't get a wedgie from my bodysuit, so that was good.
Yeah, the costumes were so good, and you both looked really good, and it was a really good like the duo was really fun. I thought your makeup looked so good. Like I think it was RuPaul said that he didn't recognize you. Like I didn't recognize you either. You looked so different, and it was so
cool. Was wild. Yeah, it was so. When I had the turnaround moment, I was like, "Holy cow!" Because it's funny, you know, when people are like, "Oh, who's your celebrity stunt double?" And I remember somebody saying to me once that I had an Angelica Houston kind of thing going on. But with that eye makeup on, that was like kind of Addams Family, amazing Morticia, like huge black. I was like, okay, now I see that. but you know, your face is just so snatched, and so I had the like proper cheekbones.
It was such a good outfit, and it was definitely really fun. There was definitely like a family resemblance, and the outfits were cool and they matched, and that sort of like the ketchup and mustard vibe that you had was really good.
Yeah.
What was it like getting in full drag, like having to I assume obviously it takes quite a while to have all the makeup put on you.
Yeah.
Something that you were used to doing for yourself, like doing a lot of makeup yourself, or was it something that was quite unusual for you?
I've been exploring kind of drag and makeup for a long time. I have a full airbrush kit, and I have like I'm such a glutton for the like big bright colorful eyeshadow palettes, and I have a massive wig collection too. So it wasn't unfamiliar, but the artistry and getting to see how everybody, and the layering and the eyebrow blocking, and just the unique looks that everybody like translated their own faces onto other people. I mean, it was the first time that my partner's face had been on another human, and so that felt quite special and generous, actually. And with all the queens, they were, you know, like Crystal doing her Opal Method face, you know, it's it's such a personal thing, I think, a drag artist's face, and for them to share that and to like actually get that family resemblance is just like, it's quite powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, like, no, that's a really interesting point. I guess you don't think about that a lot, that someone is putting their face on someone else, and it is quite a personal thing. They're almost like admitting you into their house and sort of, yeah, sharing that must be quite, that is really special and really cool. And you know, I thought you two did really well in terms of your, you know, the look, the outfit, everything. I thought you sold it on the runway. You were so fun. I loved the little, like, you know, the storyline of the waitresses and everything.
Yeah.
What was it like?
We had such a riot with that. I was like taking Michelle's order and they were shouting their orders back to me.
Yeah, it looked like you were having a blast. Like you two just so fun. What was it like then? Sort of, cause like you do obviously. They showed you briefly doing a kind of a walkthrough on the runway and everything. What did it feel like then having to do that runway? You know, with all the music and then the judges sitting there and everything. What was that like? That moment?
Oh gosh, that was insane, because that was our first time seeing Ru in drag as well. Because and everything, we were kept backstage, and then it was our first time seeing Michelle as well. And oh, it's just everything, you know. You kind of, all the blood kind of goes out of your head, I think, and you're a bit like, but I was feeling really prepared for the runway and really unprepared for the lip sync. So the runway I was able to actually relax into a little bit. And then we had these little secret clear bands that we put around my red shoes so they wouldn't fall off as well. So I felt more comfortable in those.
Give all these like funny little secrets that we don't know about. But you couldn't tell. Like, it looked amazing. It looked like the outfit was made specifically for you. It looked really cool.
It was really comfortable. Everybody always talks about getting cinched, and you know, some of the other girls were like really like cinched and had all that part of the drag experience of like not being able to breathe and everything. But mine was like stretch and comfortable, and you know, I had my own undergarments on. I was like, okay, let's go, and it was it was all very comfortable.
Well, that's good, because they often say that drag is uncomfortable, so it's nice that you felt comfortable both physically and also sort of mentally, I guess, as well.
Yeah, except for the feet.
yeah, that's I can imagine. Well, speaking of the feet thing, actually, one of the other makeover guests that I've interviewed, I can't remember who it actually was. I think it might have been Grace. Talked about when you were having your critiques, actually. A lot of people, like, you got to take your shoes off after you did your little bit. So I think there is a shot of you getting your critiques, and you can see Grace next to you with her shoes off.
Yeah, that was, oh my gosh. It's funny because in our episode, I think Jada talks about, you know, you gotta just grin and bear the foot pain, but the foot pain is a thing. Like, it just, I mean, we were in those heels for 2 days for like, I don't know what it was, like somewhere between 10 and 14 hours a day wearing these heels, and your feet are just throbbing. And I guess I'm a little older, but my feet were just like, next level pain. But there was actually a really nice trick that the queens would do. They're like, okay, so because her feet hurt so bad, they've hired all these really hot male nurses who come around. So let me tell one of the producers, and they like summon this like giant, like buff, hot male nurse who comes and like administers the ibuprofen for your feet.
That's so funny. I've not heard that before.
Because everyone's feet are just in like total pain the entire time. Like, the queens, the guests, everybody. It's just
that's so funny. So it's an excuse for you to have like a hot nurse to come over and like rub your feet, I guess.
We called the nurse 3 times over the course of the 2 days. That's so funny.
That's so funny. Yeah, I can imagine that must really affect your sort of concentration as well. If you know your feet are hurting a lot and having to stand for hours and hours on camera and like smile and be sort of the personality, and your feet are killing you, then
it's intense. It's intense. And so it just gives you like a whole new appreciation for how much, you know, the queens are going through this whole season. They have like so much riding on this, and then their feet are just like in excruciating pain the whole time. So
Yeah, it definitely gives you an appreciation for what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. After the first day I got home, and my husband had this bucket with like ice water in it with like 3 trays of ice in it. And he's like grilling me on my lip sync lyrics while my feet are soaking in ice. So like 1 a.m.
Oh God, yeah, I can only imagine that must be like tough. You spoke about obviously the lip sync, and you said you felt slightly less prepared for the lip sync than the runway.
Yeah.
What did that feel like when you found out that you were going to be lip syncing on the main stage?
Well, it was nerve-wracking in and of itself. And we had like little Snacky who can do like the splits. So that's like intimidating. She's amazing. And then they really didn't tell us if our lip sync would impact the queens coming or going. And so we all felt just this huge pressure to deliver. It was wild. And then that song is crazy because, and it's funny, I dug this out because it's so funny to look at it, but there's a ton of lyrics in this song that kind of happen on top of each other. Like literally there's no time to like if you listen to You Wear It Well, there's like these 2 voices going, but they're on top of each other. So your brain is trying to like do all the words, but it's physically impossible to do all the words. So there's like it's a really tough song to lip sync to, even if you're a big fan of Ru and like know the songs really well. When you like start deconstructing that song, it's kind of bananas. So
yeah, it's definitely, I think it's one of the tougher RuPaul songs because it is very quick, and it's almost, yeah, some parts of it almost go into like kind of not quite rap, but very quick speed.
Yeah,
whereas I think
exactly.
some of the other RuPaul songs that are a bit slower and have just one consistent voice would have been easier. So I can only imagine what it must have been like having to perform that song.
Yeah. I remember about the first like 4 lines. In terms of the experience, I only remember delivering about the first 4 lines, and then I remember virtually nothing else that happened. Like I just went into like panic. But Sherry gave me a few moves to do, and I knocked those out. So those kind of kept me physically grounded, I guess. But oof. And then so they had us going 2 at a time, and Shay was with me. And then Shay was like doing a death drop at the end, and I was just like, "Oh gosh, now what?"
So, at what point did you find out that the lip sync wasn't going to affect the outcome of the episode?
Not until they kind of relined us all up and did the Shantae You All Stay. Like literally that yeah. Because we especially when they were doing it too, like in pairs, we weren't sure if this was going to be like a sudden death thing or what was happening. So silly.
That's really fun. Yeah, and it's I guess I wasn't sure when I watched it. I was like, I was thinking, I can't imagine they'd make these poor women lip sync for their partner's life. That's really harsh. So I kind of sure, but I wasn't sure if you knew that it didn't count, but it sounded like you didn't.
We didn't. And so we were bricking it.
Well, I thought you all did a really good job, and it was such a fun episode overall, and I was really heartwarming, and I think it was lovely to see. All of you look like you were having such a good time, and that's why I think it's one of the most popular makeover episodes, because it was just so genuinely joyous to watch it. When you were getting your critiques, obviously you two got really good critiques, and I don't think you got even a single negative one, and like, everyone seemed to love you, and Ru seemed to really love you. Did you think that perhaps you were going to be in the top?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it just based on what the critiques were, it was it seemed to be really well received, which was nice. I was like, it was so funny. But I'd also like broken off 2 of my nails, so I was like desperately trying to like mask my hands so that I wouldn't screw things up in the critique with my nails that I'd lost backstage.
That's so, but no, I mean, I didn't notice that, so don't worry. I personally didn't notice.
And actually, Ross Matthews actually called it out. He's like, "Oh, and the nails are opposite to the no, no, no," and I was like, mm-hmm.
Yes, you tried to make it look like it was deliberate.
Yeah.
And so obviously, yeah, you found out. So you found out you obviously you were all backstage. You found out that your partner was safe. I guess, did that then give you kind of a relief knowing that you were safe and you had done your job in terms of keeping your partner in the competition?
Oh, completely. Totally ridiculous side detail. In that moment, we were all backstage in the untucked area, kind of watching what was happening on the stage on the television. And I realized when we got there, I was like, I haven't been to the loo all day today. And I suddenly was like, oh my gosh, I really need to go to the bathroom. And they're like, no, you can't go anywhere. They're about to start this and we got to do it all live and it syncs up. And I was like, so then I'm like needing the restroom really badly and really nervous for my partner. So I'm like trying to be like, yeah, it's good. Can I go to the bathroom now? It was so ridiculous. Anyways, that's probably too much information, but
no, that's a funny piece about backstage tea. I mean, yeah. So the whole time, so anyone rewatching when you're watching the lip sync or the deliberations, basically you were desperate for the toilet.
I was just like,
I'm sure we can all relate to that. I'm sure we've all like been on camera or been on like having your photo taken, and actually you just like, I just really need to pee.
It was silly. I was like, I wasn't. You're like having this like dream of a lifetime moment, and then you're like, nature, stop getting in the way.
Well, you couldn't see. You looked, but you kept it together. You looked very stoic, and you looked very supportive. So overall, on your experience, what was the best thing about being in drag, and what was the worst thing?
I mean, it was like a whole new level of like transformation, and really kind of lit a fire under me to like explore even more. It's an area that I'm comfortable in, but I was like, I need to just keep pushing the limits. And so that kind of inspiration to just keep dialing it up, even in my own kind of quiet, introverted way. But that was really special. And to know that I could like deliver those things through the drag was amazing. And then the worst thing about being in drag, probably just the feet thing. I know I keep talking about the feet, but holy God, it was insane.
I think a few people have mentioned the shoes. I think that's an enduring part of their experience. So, and I think that's fair. It must be so uncomfortable. And I guess if you could have walked around in normal shoes, you would have been absolutely, that would have just made us taken away one other issue that you didn't have to worry about. So
exactly. I made the mistake on day one of even the shoes I wore my own self. I was wearing 4-inch platform boots, but they had a heel on them, and so I even made my own life worse because I like tortured myself with my own shoes, then had to translate it into the red pumps.
Yeah, I guess you don't think about those things when you're actually doing it, and then it's sort of after the fact you're like, oh yeah, but it's TV. It adds to the kind of genuineness of the show, and it's all fun and themes.
Yeah.
So obviously you filmed the show, and then it didn't obviously come out for quite a long time, and then there was COVID as well in the meantime. Mm-hmm. One thing that I think quite a lot of people wanted to sort of know was, obviously we're not going to be talking about your partner and everything, what they've done, because that's obvious, but it was more, I think people were kind of a lot of people said that they just felt really bad for you because you were like so fun on the show and so cool, and they were worried that maybe the fact that you were partnered with someone who then like was disqualified and had all this stuff come out about them, whether that in some way negatively affected your time on the show, or whether you were worried that you were going to be like edited out of the show. Is that something that kind of crossed your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting over the course of the season where they kind of reshuffled the edit, and I wasn't sure if I would really be much in the episode, and so and I would have understood if they had done that. So it was and it was, but then surprisingly I was in as much as the other guests, which was a pleasant surprise, and it was fun to be able to like experience the transformation again. It was more that I just wanted to be able to sort of see that world again, you know. And I was really excited with how it all turned out, and appreciated all the support from all the fans, and just got a lot of love for, and still do. And you know, I like ran in, like got recognized the first time when I went to get my COVID shot, actually, by there was a wonderful gay male nurse who was doing my like aftercare after I got my first COVID shot, and read my name on my page as I handed it to him. It was like, I was so excited. And so that was kind of a fun moment where I got some like in real life love for the first time since the pandemic.
Well, that's really sweet. I'm glad you got recognized. I'm glad you had a positive experience despite obviously that part of it, because you did come across as just being so like genuinely lovely and funny. And I guess your name helps because it's such a unique, cool name that people I think remembered you as being Janet the Planet, and it rhymes as well, which is always it kind of sounds like a drag queen name, to be honest.
I know, right? It's funny because some of the other girls on the show had that moment of needing to choose their drag names, and you know, I didn't really have that because my name was already embroidered on my outfit. But it was kind of funny because I was like, I kind of already have a drag name, so I don't feel like I was robbed of the experience, but I kind of already had that experience earlier in my life. I think it's the whole process of it is having your outside match your inside, right? And to like have a name like Janet the Planet just kind of like says to people, you're in for something that's a bit different, right? And you know, having a drag name facilitates that energy coming out. But yeah, it's funny. I had often like thought like if I became a drag character, would I keep Janet the Planet or not? And I had this like idea that I would become Joya Bounds, like Joya, and then last name Bounds. But then I was like, no, Janet the Planet, that's me.
I mean, it's a great name, and it rhymes, and it's really catchy. You can't forget the name Janet the Planet. So I mean, you know, I think it fits your personality.
Yeah. It was very sweet when Victoria Scone was announced for the UK, and I reached out or I followed her on Instagram, and then she messaged me and she's like, "Oh, Janet the Planet, the original cis woman queen on Drag Race." I was very touched.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, no, Victoria seems so cool. So I think you both kind of give off us a kind of a similar energy, especially in drag. You have that kind of campiness about you. So I can kind of see that.
Yeah. No, I'd love to, if she makes it over for DragCon at some point, I'd love to meet her.
And so obviously the name of my channel is Drag Tea Served. So I was wondering if you could serve us some drag tea and maybe tell us something that happened behind the scenes, or something that wasn't shown on camera that you wish had been.
I mean, there's this very odd thing that happens on set, and I guess it's a reality show thing, but basically they basically will like freeze all conversation on set. And so you're all just standing around completely silent. And it was so strange when we first met our queens. They kind of had told us about this protocol of like, okay, now when we freeze or whatever the word is, I think it's freeze, and you have to stop talking. So we just met our queens, and we're standing next to them, and we're not allowed to talk to them. And they had this extra long pause, so there's kind of like this big pregnant pause in the room. We're all like, okay, what's happening now? And we're like all trying to like have these very like sidey kind of like quiet conversations getting shushed, and all very silly.
Yeah, I guess I've heard that from a few people that they do this thing where you can't talk on set, and it does feel very unnatural. And I guess especially for you all coming in and you aren't on the show all the time, you just came in for that one episode. It must be quite weird to then meet someone knowing you've got to sort of be partnered with them, and then you can't even talk to them until they tell you can.
Yeah. And I think just because I'm introverted, if I like wind down and get quiet again, it takes me a minute to like get chatty again. And so I think it was very, very quiet for a lot of the workroom scenes, and my voice would get quieter. And there was a time when like my partner kept shouting questions that I had out to the room on my back because I was feeling so shy. It's like, Janet wants to know who's got the biggest transformation in drag.
But I guess maybe. Do you think that perhaps, because obviously you mentioned you are quite shy as person or slightly introverted, do you think did being in drag and your experience on Drag Race, did that in any way change your life in any way or change the way you think about things?
I think I'm more comfortable kind of walking into a room and kind of owning the room a little bit more than I was in the past, of just a little bit more of the like take it or leave it kind of energy, which I had been lacking, I think. So
that's nice. You had you took something away from the experience that was really positive, and
yeah.
So obviously I'd love to get on to some subscriber questions, if I may.
Sure.
I had lots of questions for you from people. The first question is technically not a question, but this question comes from someone called Grace Ball.
Oh, Grace!
And it said, please tell Janet that Opal loves her dearly and misses her terribly.
That's so nice. It's so nice. We like have a group text. We like talk every day pretty much still, which is so nice. And we send each other holiday presents, and Bethany does all this baking for us all. It's so nice.
That's really, actually lots of people that was one of the most asked questions, was whether you kept in touch with the other makeover guests.
Yeah, I was all teed up to come to DragCon, and we were all going to move around as a little troupe, which we were excited to do. And I know that almost everybody did. Unfortunately, we lost someone in our family exactly that weekend, and so I wasn't able to join, but we were sending each other love. But definitely the plan, all going well next year, will be for us all to reunite there.
No, that would be amazing, because I know so many people, especially as a group, I'm sure some people would lose their mind seeing you all, because you all like iconic, and it was such an iconic episode that I think even though there's been 2 seasons since then, it actually so many people still remember that episode because it was just so iconic.
Yeah, we were all texting I guess on Friday after the UK season 4 makeover challenge just aired, and we're all like, oh we're like, we got to make sure we like get together for the makeover challenges going forward, because it was just like or at least like join and watch virtually together.
Yeah, it definitely, I think it's a really cool concept, the makeover challenge, and it's definitely one of my favorite ones, especially when they bring in people that have a kind of a connection and a story, and you get to see that, you get to experience that journey with them, and I think that's really cool.
So special. Yeah.
The next question is also not technically a question, but I thought I'd say it. Someone said, oh my God, I absolutely love Janet. She changed my life. I'm 6'2" and she's also tall. So the things she said on the show helped me get my confidence back. I'll never be able to say thank you to her enough.
Oh, that is so lovely. That makes me really happy. And I hope that person is open to getting some heels, because there's something really, really empowering about like owning your height so well that you can like grab some big heels. I love wearing 4-inch heels. It makes me, and I generally do platforms, not stilettos, or but that's why it's such a shock to my feet. But yeah, and having huge shoes and just like owning it and just go and own the room, it's the most fun thing.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you shouldn't let that hold you back. Just because you're tall, you can still wear heels and be even taller. Because like you said on the show, I think you said your dad told you like tall is beautiful and everything, and obviously it is. And so many people.
My sister and I are both 6 feet. Yeah, and we would get all slumpy, and he would just sort of come and give us a swat and be like, "Hey, stand up. Tall is beautiful."
That's really sweet. And so someone else asked, this question's kind of slightly random, I suppose. There's nothing to actually do with your episode, but someone said, what season of Drag Race or any franchise was your favorite and why?
Oh my goodness. Probably any season with Katya in it. I just nerd out for Katya so much. And my favorite Snatch game ever was the Katya doing Bjork. It was just like next level. It just, if I'm ever feeling low, I just have to think about her, like with her bubbles and making her little trills and whirs.
It was really funny, and it was such a good character. And I'm surprised no one else had done Bjork, because she's such a kind of like wacky, crazy person. It's easy to do. And I thought she did such a good job.
Oh my God. It was everything. It was so funny. I love Katya because Katya is just so vulnerable and just kind of shares the message of it's okay to not be okay, and to just find your creativity in that space,
Yeah, and I can actually, now you've mentioned it, I can kind of see a similarity between you two, because I think you're both very kind of like genuine. You just say your feelings. You're not sort of not ashamed of your feelings. You're just kind of talking about them. You're both very open and got that slightly quirky side, but it's maybe slightly introverted in a way compared to some of the other big queens who are like, really big personalities. So I actually can kind of see that for you. Someone asked, when you saw all of the final makeovers on your episode, if you had to be done by someone else, another contestant in the episode, who would you have wanted to be partnered with?
Oh, Jada, hands down. I mean, that face sculpting is everything. There's like a couple of people and a couple of queens that, I mean, obviously everybody would want to have their face done by Raven, but Jada is up there, in terms of just otherworldly, amazing. And to see her do it is just like everything.
Yeah, her work was like when she was with Bethany. She looked so good. I mean, Jada always looks amazing. She's so talented, but like to see the artistry on the face, I was like, I kind of wasn't surprised that they won in a way, because they just looked so good.
It was amazing. It's so glamorous, just like next level. I was so excited for Bethany that she got to have that journey. She hadn't been a big makeup wearer, I don't think, before the show, and I think she's like discovering her own glamorous side since the show as well, which is great.
and so that kind of leads me on to another question in a way. Someone asked, like, have you done any drag since the show, or is it something that you would ever consider doing again?
I have been exploring with my like eyebrow blocking. I am so terrible at it though. I've got to take some lessons or something. Mine always end up looking like oatmeal. Like the worst. I'm like, I'm doing all the things they say to do, and it's oatmeal every time. So as soon as I like master my eyebrows, I'll be in drag most of the time, I think.
Yeah, it must be so difficult to do. Like, I can't, I mean, I've never done it, but I can only imagine it. Like, even just like blocking your brow, it must be so difficult to sort of get it right. And you can see why sometimes the queens, even themselves, like sometimes it doesn't quite work for them. And you think, well, if they've been doing it for years, how are the rest of us mere mortals supposed to do it?
Yeah. And then all the like layering and powdering piece, I need to like get my rhythm on for all that, because there's so much artistry in the like stacking of the depth of the makeup. I'll keep working on it, but I want to like go deeper on it for sure.
Well, I'm sure we'd love to see like another Janet the Planet, you know, Snapchat and everything. Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. I'm sure people like we loved you on the show, and it's been so cool to like get to hear more about you and like hear more about your experiences on the show and everything. So if people wanted to sort of like, you know, follow you or find out more about you, do you have a social media that you can like give out, or is there anything like that?
Yep, I'm at JT Planet on Instagram, and then my website, if you want to see anything about me, is janettheplanet.com.
Great.
I've had it since 1998.
Wow, so that's like an OG website.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been lovely to get to speak to you, and I'm sure people would join me in saying that, you know, you were so inspirational on the show. You were so cool, and like we would love to see you again on whatever it might be, whether it's a drag show, another episode of Drag Race, you know, like 2.0 for Janet the Planet. So
I want to plant the seeds of the universe that I would be more than happy to be on the judging panel for Drag Race Canada. It gives me an excuse to get home.
Please let that happen. That would be iconic. Thank you so much, and yeah, I really hope that we see you as on Drag Race Canada or anything in just any way. We want to see more Janet the Planet.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you for this. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Bye.